Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch for Comics Get Counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 130, 5 from the Umbrella Academy.
Oh, it's issue 135? Wow, we skipped ahead, didn't we?
Bum. Yes, issue 130. And we are covering the character named 5. For our patrons, if you recall, we did a trade paperback review of volume 1 of the Umbrella Academy some point last year. I believe to tie in with the second season of the TV show. So for our patrons, you can go check that out. And if you're not yet a patron, you can go to patreon.com/capesonthecouch and subscribe. And regardless of what level you're at, you can get access to our trade paperbacks. And we've got one coming up that we actually just recorded prior to this with Matt, where we are going to be talking about the Welcome Back Frank trade paperback from The Punisher. So always fun to talk with Matt. That was a real fun one to record.
Yeah, agreed.
So let's jump right to it then. 5 and the whole Umbrella Academy characters created by Gerard and Gabriel in the Umbrella Academy, the Apocalypse Suite number 1, September of 2007. So the Umbrella Academy is about a team of superpowered children all around the world. Children are born to women who previously showed no signs of pregnancy whatsoever. And the children are adopted by Dr. Sir Reginald Hargreeves, a wealthy philanthropist and scientist who is also secretly an alien. And he decides to create a team of these children, and 7 of the children ultimately survive, and they are all identified by numbers instead of names. So each of the children has a superpower. 5 is able to travel through time, but turns out he can only go forwards. And so he arrives in a post-apocalyptic world, and he is alone and spends 45 years figuring out how to return. He ages in normal time over the course of those 45 years. Once he returns, he is reverted to his 10-year-old body and is then incapable of aging or growing. And so he arrives shortly after Dr. Hargreeves dies and reveals to the team that has been estranged for 9 years that the world ends 3 days after Reginald dies. And so he has to help bring everybody back together. So he works with number 1, aka Space Boy, who has a head mutated onto the body of a gorilla.
Yep.
Because comics, they end up fighting several sets of villains, but the most important one is number 7. She believed that she had no abilities for her entire life. Turns out she's the most powerful member of the team, and she can cause death through sound waves, and she gets experimented on by evil musicians who want to create the world's deadliest orchestra piece and use her powers to destroy the world. And she calls herself the White Violin. And so the rest of the team battles her, and the number 5 shoots her in the head, leaving her paralyzed but alive. So that's the first volume. That's Apocalypse Suite. The second volume, entitled Dallas, it's revealed that number 5 was experimented on while he was in the future by a group of time travelers. And he had DNA from history's greatest killers grafted into his body, making him the perfect assassin. And he was designed to prevent aberrations in the time stream and was then sent back to kill JFK. So at this point now, you have there's an old number 5. He has to kill all the other assassins attempting to kill Kennedy so that the young number 5 can do the job. JFK ultimately ends up getting killed by number 3, aka Rumor. And it's also revealed that number 5 and number 1, Space Boy, are actually twin brothers. So that's volume 2. I'm really condensing a lot of the stuff with that. We're going to get into particularly one of the issues as it relates to some of his coping mechanisms. Volume 3 is entitled Hotel Oblivion, and I'm going to be honest, neither of us have read Hotel Oblivion,
Womp womp.
and I don't want to give you a recap of stuff that we haven't read or really had an opportunity to get information on. So I apologize fully for anybody who was looking forward to an analysis of what happens to number 5 in that story. We will get to it. Unfortunately, just we didn't have the time, folks. I'm sorry.
Life happens. I mean,
Life happens.
At this point, I'm pretty sure everyone is aware that we don't read absolutely every issue of every comic ever created by mankind. So that's
That sure would be fun, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, that's the dream, but we could still work with what we got, which pretty much is a microcosm for life itself. So let's go.
Indeed. So issues then. First off, one of the two primary things, he spent over 4 decades alone in a post-apocalyptic world. This leaves him completely detached from humanity. And this is something that after he returns, he has struggles with basically trying to interact with not only his pseudo siblings, but just people in general, because he spent so much time by himself. If you've ever seen the famous Twilight Zone episode with Burgess Meredith, what it's revealed in the second episode and the second volume, that when he first travels to the future and he's very much by himself, he does have that sort of ecstatic, oh, I can do whatever it is that I want sort of thing. And then after 40 years of trying to figure out how to get back and talking to inanimate objects that he has given names and personalities to, this leaves him just a bit detached and having difficulty relating to people, not the least of which is the second issue, but let's start with that.
Yeah. So on a less extreme pole of that, if anyone's seen the movie Castaway, Tom Hanks, it's a great movie. Being stuck on a deserted island and his famous companion, Wilson, the volleyball, you understood why he was doing what he was doing. And the same thing with 5, because I know that for the most part in comics and in situations like this, we want to make it sound like the person is crazy when they're talking to themselves and all of that. But that's not the case. It's the exact opposite. We have gone over so many times in this podcast that you need other people in your life. You need companionship. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a one-on-one monogamous relationship where you live happily ever after or whatever. Just the fact that you could talk to someone, even if they don't share every single thing that they agree with you or whatever, even if it is small talk, which I'll admit I hate, it's all necessary for our brains to be able to process what we're doing. As a matter of fact, the process of speaking, even if you're a quiet person, is still important because what you say has to be said in a certain way so that you know what you're doing. That sounds convoluted because we do it automatically. It's something that's ingrained with us once we understand the idea of speech and language, but it's inherent and we get to practice it. And even if we're not correcting our own diction or trying to understand definitions or whatever, children that babble, that don't have full language yet, it's still important. So imagine if you now have nothing to test that against. You have no opportunity to figure out just how far off you are in your own thoughts, except for yourself. So that type of just inward and potentially downward spiral can be devastating. The good news is, if you have enough love for yourself, good self-esteem, I mean, then you can do this indefinitely. There's no reason why you would just need to not exist. I don't want to say it that way. But there's a difference between saying, I have chosen to live a life where I spend much of my time alone versus I had no say in the matter and I am alone. That is huge. And thankfully, and in my opinion, he's able to get back to having the opportunity to interact with people. But to say that any of it is going to be awkward is really underselling the point. This is starting from square one. Even if you have your full formed adult intelligent mind with all of the variations that you would have developed over the years or whatever, it could be incredibly intimidating because imagine you've had a stroke and you're learning to speak again, or you have aphasia, you have difficulty understanding what other people are saying, even if your words are fluent. That's something that we tend to, like I said, take for granted. And yet, when you actually have a conversation with people like this, or they're trying to have a conversation with you, you start to really appreciate just how nuanced all of language is. It's not just the words, it's also the cadence. It's everything you get in this podcast in terms of modulation of voice, as well as the things that you don't get in this podcast, facial expressions, tone, stance, all of the physical cues that you're used to. And imagine you didn't have to even think about any of that stuff. You could just be whittling away, writing something down or doing something else and not even have to worry about how it looks to other people. Not that you should kowtow to what other people say it should look like, but you just lose that certain subtlety that can really add the spice of life and variety and allow people to connect and have those emotional attachments. So it all got ripped away. And then to just say, okay, just put it back, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, we are social creatures as a species. And to have that, as you said, ripped away and then put back forcefully after an extended period of time is so detrimental. I mean, there's a reason why solitary confinement is considered torture, under most definitions of the term. It's because forcing a human being to live without interaction is so dangerous and detrimental to psyche that it is really torturous. And, I know that there's a lot of talk, and we've done Mental Health Avengers about the prison system and reformation versus punitive, et cetera. But solitary confinement is a level of punishment beyond merely just locking someone up. It's locking someone up and completely removing them from any sort of human interaction. And that's something that I just, I really just, personally, I struggle with finding any sort of redeeming quality to it. But it's not just that he's detached from humanity because he spent 50 years alone. It's the second issue then, which exacerbates the first, is he is an adult in a child's body. He is essentially a 60-year-old man inside the body of a 10-year-old, and he can never age. So he will never get an opportunity to really experience being an adult again, even though mentally he very much has that mindset. There is incredible dysmorphia with his body because of what he has experienced and how he has lived. Because as I said, when he was first sent into the future, and when he spent that time alone, he aged normally. Right before his return, he was a 60-year-old man. And then to immediately have his brain put back in the body of a 10-year-old, and then to not go forward with that I can't even imagine what that feels like.
Yeah. And I'll admit it's difficult for me as well. There are so many ways that I'm considering this. Taking it at face value, the idea of development and all of the things that go along with what we consider being an adult and having those not happen. So in theory, we could be talking about it purely on the physical level, if it's hormonally, or let's say it's an adult, but they have certain things they want in life. I'm thinking of for example, a woman who wants to have children, and yet because of early ovarian cancer and has had their ovaries removed and actually has pretty much total abdominal hysterectomy, things like that. So it's just not going to happen. Or, a man finds out that he's, unfortunately for one reason or another, that he's not able to have children, at least biologically. That's one way, just purely physical, saying like there are certain things in life that everyone, once again, we're getting this theme, takes for granted. And that's not going to be you. That's not going to be your life in that way. if we're talking about someone who, and much more akin to 5 in this sense, has had things that now are taken away. So 5 at least had the experience of growing up as an adult, even if it was by himself, and then has to now adapt to the idea that they're a child permanently. Well, what about those people that start losing things physically that they once had? It can be as drastic as ALS. It can be tragic accidents, which, not to get into details, but Anthony and I know of a situation that had just recently happened for people that we know and love. It can be just the change in general for people where they're noticing that the things that really brought them pleasure, and for one reason or another, be it a medical condition or just bad circumstances, they're no longer going to be able to do. It can be the alcoholic that is with their friends and they're all out and everybody's having a great time with the drink in their hand, and they know fully well they can't do that because it's going to lead to more problems for them. And so they have to be that one person that gets the label of designated driver, and unfortunately someone says it derisively because they're mocking their addiction history. There are so many examples of the things that life has in store for all of us, and we know that it's all going to be its own unique mix, but it's a really, really tough pill to swallow when, through no fault of your own, I think that's a big part of this. No explanation given, no rational thing. You can't even view it as a punishment because no one deemed it so. You don't have the things that you would expect. That type of circumstance leading to jealousy, anger, depression, anxiety, all of it. Full spectrum. Everything is possible. And layering that on top of the original detachment, you can see this is kind of going to a really dark place. And the fact that 5 has been able to survive all of this is truly a testament to how they do it. But we'll kind of transition. I'll let you do the transition, but we'll kind of get into why having all of this stacked up could be its own problem, even if you're still surviving through it.
Yeah. And one of the things that I forgot to mention in the background, but I think it's certainly relevant, is that all of the other characters have names. They have first names, except number 5, who's only ever referred to as the boy because he never really spoke it aloud prior to his disappearance. And then he spent so long by himself, he forgot it. So that's another thing that has definitely impacted him. The fact that he is only ever referred to as the boy or number 5, that any semblance of identity has been stripped away from him and he's just left with a number. And this results in some unhealthy coping mechanisms, as we see in the second volume. So there is a talking monkey in this series because comics. And at one point, number 5 is found drinking heavily, again, in the body of a 10-year-old, but the mind of a 60-year-old, drinking heavily while the talking monkey dresses up in a wig, dress, and pearl necklace and sings happy birthday to him seductively, a la Marilyn Monroe to JFK. And it's sort of hinted at that this is not the first time that this has happened. And this is how he chooses to unwind. So the booze by itself is a problem, especially given that physiologically he is still 10 years old. And then if you've got a monkey singing to you, I don't care who you are. I am not a professional, but that ain't right.
Okay, so this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. I'm not going to focus on the damn monkey, okay? That's not nearly the point in and of itself. I had given an example before we were recording this, and I'm not going to dwell on it because it could be any person's example, but we know these people in our lives work hard, play hard. And as a physician, obviously, I'll admit I'm prone to it as well, where the stressors of life, especially if it's in multiple spheres of your existence, you know you need to recuperate. You need to recharge your battery. And there are plenty of different ways to do it. And I am not going to pretend and be like this perfect Boy Scout that says, oh, well, the only things you should do are to drink plenty of water, get rest, exercise, and eat healthily, only organic foods and mostly vegetables, et cetera, et cetera. That's all good advice, and it's all good things to do. I'm not denying that. But I'm also not going to deny that it's okay to do some things that are less than ideal in moderation. And I think everyone can understand that. Some people take things, and I know we've done episodes on this where they do it to excess. It's not something that they do all the time. It's actually episodic, and it can be totally sporadic. Think binging on something as opposed to it being a constant everyday thing. Now, the positive of that, of course, is the person likes to point out, hey, I get my job done, or I do things the right way, or I always show up, et cetera, et cetera. Like just saying all the good things. But in those moments of just degradation of quality of their experience while they're trying to recover from other things, be it substances or taking an incredible amount of time on other things that get to the point of actually causing either physical or mental harm, and then just saying because you enjoyed it in the moment, it was a good thing. That's also incredibly problematic. There's been plenty of research to show that can do lasting damage, even if it is quote unquote once in a while, because as we age, no pun intended with 5, we don't recover as well as we did when we were younger. But more importantly, we give the expectation of saying when things are getting stressful, you start anticipating the idea like, oh man, I am so going on this huge bender. I'm so getting, wasted, or man, oh man, nobody's going to see me for days. I'm just going to be, just locked away, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I'm not, to make it clear, I'm not trying to yuck anyone's yum, as Anthony has said several times, but the idea that because you use that as your main way of dealing with the world, be careful, because there are times, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say it this way, depending on what it is you're doing or how you're doing it, most judges don't apologize if it's something that's actually highly destructive. And even if it's not, if it's just personal consequences, well, they don't put on tombstones or divorce papers, hey, at least I was trying to cope.
Very true. And as an attorney, I can tell you that one of the maxims that we use is ignorance of the law is no excuse, and that you can't always say, well, I didn't know, or that wasn't my intention. Another maxim is intent follows the bullet. So if you're ultimately doing these things, doesn't matter what your goals are, if they end up being too destructive, it's time to re-examine and take a step back. And again, as we say, we're not trying to yuck anybody's yum, but all things in moderation. You have to be mindful of some of the things that you're doing, and just be cognizant of the potential long-term impacts, whether that's substances, sexual activity, what have you. These things can have physical and mental consequences. And as long as you are aware and you are willing to accept and acknowledge the consequences of these actions, at least do that. At least keep that in mind. But, please be safe and take care of yourself, and don't put yourself in danger, and certainly don't put anybody else in danger. So we're going to take a break. We're going to plug our sponsor, BetterHelp, as well as some friends of ours. And when we get back, we'll get into treatment. Stay tuned. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? BetterHelp will assess your individual needs and match you with a licensed professional therapist. You can begin communicating within 48 hours.
It isn't a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional counseling done securely online. BetterHelp has a network of over 15,000 counselors with a broad range of expertise. You can log in and message your counselor anytime and get timely and thoughtful responses. You can also schedule regular video or phone sessions. No waiting room required.
BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if you feel you don't have a good connection. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial help is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit betterhelp.com/capes. That's better, HELP. and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional.
Special offer for Capes on the Couch fans. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/capes.
Have you ever dreamt of being a superhero? Legends: A Superhero Story is a new actual play podcast using the Legends superhero role-playing game system, available on all podcast platforms. This exciting new superhero tabletop RPG follows our Game Master Jack and our fledgling heroes played by Chad, Emily, Amanda, and Daniel as they work their way through their origin story and beyond. Listen in as they discover their powers and abilities. Let's hope they learn to work together as a team in time to save the world and truly become legends. Legends: A Superhero Story is available on all podcast platforms. For more information, follow us on social media at The Legends Cast or visit our website, www.matchplaygames.ca/The Legends Cast.
Hi, I'm Erica Schultz, and this is Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling.
And we're back in universe treatment for number 5. It's an interesting combination of issues, and I'm very curious to see what some of your recommendations are going to be.
This is tough. You know, it's fascinating that 5 was able to find his way back after jumping forward in time. And there are explanations given as well where it seems like he's in places where he shouldn't be in terms of, they first described it as super speed, but really it's micro jumps in time, things like that. So I would riff off of that a little bit. And I'd obviously need to have Hargreeves involved in this too, because I know I don't gravitate towards this usually, but I think we do need more of a child specialist. And I'm not saying that because he's trapped in a 10-year-old boy's body. You've already hinted at it. He has lost so much over so much time that the idea that this is going to be fixed way late in the game is not truly realistic, mainly because it doesn't seem like he has an interest in changing. So I'm wondering if we can find a way just to get back to the actual child and see if we can find a way. I don't want to say prevent things from happening because I think everyone's life experience is valuable. But if there's a way to at least have some sort of track record as he's going along, even if it followed the same arc, maybe just notes to himself or videos to himself so that he has feedback, genuine feedback about what's going on. And maybe if you can incorporate others through some other comics BS, whatever it is, just as we say with our opening, that he's not alone and legitimately doesn't have to feel alone. And if you do that enough times, even if it's just these weird recordings through time that wouldn't make sense otherwise, they'll make sense to him and might allow for a greater connection to the world at large. Like I said, even if it has a similar trajectory.
Interesting.
Just to clarify, can you imagine if you knew how your life was going to be, at least according to what it already has been, but you now have the opportunity as it goes along to have someone, be it a loved one or even a professional, still make commentary and guide you along the way so that you're not veering off and having such a rough time by yourself?
Well, there's two things with that. One, I would remind you, just, you're talking in universe, Dr. Hargreeves is dead. So he would not be able to help number 5. But also that brings in a whole temporal paradox.
That's what I'm saying. Use the paradox. I'm not denying that that's not the case. It's just basically, it might actually create such an ultimate feedback loop of self-reflection that you end up with almost a Groundhog Day phenomenon, but over the course of an entire lifespan instead of just one day.
But I'm not really sure that I would want to know how anything goes, even if I wouldn't want to go back and tell 15 or 16-year-old me what's going on, because I think it would throw me off. Because at least for me personally, I'd be like, oh yeah, well, screw you. I'm going to do things differently just to spite you, because I don't want things to turn, you're trying to help me. Well, I'll show you. And that's, me being contrarian that I am. But I just think it speaks to a bigger issue of free will and predetermination. And there's a whole litany of things that I'm just not sure. And it's very rare that I would ever try to critique or make comments on your therapy sessions, but I'm not 100% certain this is going to go the way you think it's going to go.
Well, it can't go the way I think it's going to go because I don't know how it's going to go. Because I'll also point out, as you already said in our intro, he's already been manipulated. He ended up having all of this stuff involved in terms of having the genetics of assassins and killers because that was done as he was trying to get back to his original age. So that manipulation has already happened. So I don't want to pretend and say that we're dealing with a situation where if we go to the exact right time, we get a clean slate and he can do everything perfectly all over again or anything of the sort. I'm saying that if we're, in for a penny, in for a pound, if you're going to meddle with things this much, the idea that you can have a balancing act might have a greater positive influence than negative, because you already went in my opinion, you went almost as negative as you could possibly go. And I respect the idea that someone is going to be contrarian. I mean, that's been true regardless of if we're talking about time travel or if we're talking about just dealing with an adolescent. So from that standpoint, we always have to keep that reverse psychology in mind. And it can always be tweaked, where once again, who knows? I don't if this ends up creating the type of paradox that just goes on ad infinitum, would that have happened anyway because of the nature of this phenomenon in the first place? Like the very first time it happened, does that still mean, because, we haven't read the whole thing, and of course, in comics, there's no such thing as a true ending, that this wouldn't fold in on itself again and again and again, regardless of a person like mine's intervention? I'm just saying, if you have the opportunity then to do something that may result in a slightly better good or a slightly altered positive, where the expected value is a little better than absolute serial killer with perfect skills, then that might potentially be a risk willing to take.
All right. When you put it like that, I understand. And it makes more sense. Like I said, just from my perspective, when you were initially describing it, something just didn't seem right. But I'm on board now. I'm on board for what it's worth.
No. Don't worry. You don't have to be on board because, like I said, I don't know how this would go.
Fair enough. So out of universe then, I mean, obviously we're going to have to take out the whole time traveling scenario because that clearly can't happen. What I would argue is, I was going to say it's difficult to do this, to have these two simultaneous things in the same child. But I would say a child who has been isolated for an extended period of time, but also as a real world analog for the whole mind of a 60-year-old inside a 10-year-old body, I would argue that a lot of children who are forced to mature faster than they are maybe mentally prepared for. We hear stories all the time about kids who have to parent their parents or have to take on responsibilities at an age in which they are not emotionally and mentally prepared for. But that's my point, is it's very difficult to combine a child who has to, who's matured faster than others while also simultaneously being isolated for extended periods of time.
It's not as uncommon as you would think. There are plenty of children that either had to drop out of school or basically juggle school and work while caring for parents who just simply, in theory, should be the ones taking care of them. And often that comes in the circumstance of neglect or even abandonment. So from that standpoint, like I said, it's way more common than you think.
Okay. Well, having said all of that then,
Yeah.
and with
So
the caveat that you are not an experienced child mental health professional,
Yeah.
what would you recommend?
I mean, this is one of those situations where you're really trying to create as much of a systems approach as you can. First, just the practical nature of it. What resources do you have? And I know a lot of times I don't do as much bread and butter as I probably should. So if a child is taking on adult responsibilities, then they should have adult resources. If they need assistance through social services, if they need, not even saying this in a negative way, and politics has nothing to do with this when it comes to what some people refer to as entitlements or added support, be that EBT, food stamps, housing assistance, potential, if it truly is, according to the professional involved, the child is taking on responsibilities that they should never have at their given age, finding a way to go through the system via guardianship, if that were truly the case. But honestly, if it seemed like the child is actually doing the best they can and doesn't need those types of child protective services, all of the things necessary that this person will survive, that's the first thing. Get that part of the hierarchy of needs done. Then from there, my goodness, just my base on that. I know people have come to know that I focus so much on CBT because that's what I've learned the most, but I wouldn't even go that far. It would much more be what's called supportive therapy, just acknowledging what that person is going through and experiencing, mirroring back their own language as to what they're saying, but perhaps changing the wording so that it's in a more constructive way, because often people will say things that make it sound more like they're trying to be, for comics, a superhero in their own world, which if you construct it in a positive way, that can be amazing. But often what these people are doing is they're saying they're supposed to be a superhero and they're failing, which is the opposite of what you would want. And so making it more human and bringing it back to a level of, I wouldn't expect you to be able to do all of this perfectly, and acknowledging the parts that you're getting right and the parts that still are challenges that we want to assist you with. The wording is so important, and making sure, once again, not to be patronizing, but to make sure that the language is appropriate to the person you're talking to and not trying to go over their head. Just things like that, very subtle, trying to make sure that they know that they are fully supported. And in all honesty, taking much more of a, if necessary, that role of a paternal, a maternal figure in that person's life, if that's what they need modeled. So those are all possibilities. There's no one way to go about it, but that's the bare bones of what I would approach, and make sure that I had my own person to counsel me as I, try not to bring that home and like cry all the way driving home or coming from the office or whatever, because these cases can be heartbreaking.
Absolutely. And I know we've spoken a couple times on this show about how it's very important that mental health professionals see colleagues, and it's almost, a circle that you're seeing somebody to help you deal with what you're dealing with. And then they're going to have to see somebody because they're getting everything that all of their patients, be they both, regular non-professionals as well as other mental health professionals, are seeing. And so there's just this big circle of assistance within the community, which I just think, is interesting and unique from a meta perspective, because I would say it's very unique to the mental health professional field, that you all have to rely upon each other to help you dealing with each other. If any of that, what I'm saying doesn't make sense, it doesn't entirely make sense. As I'm saying it, it makes sense in my brain, but I'm tired.
So no, it's okay. It's okay. But the idea of I'll go a little broader than that. Physician, heal thyself. Or it doesn't have to be a physician, but the point is that the best thing you can do if there's something that you notice is not going right, it's always great to do self-help. There's no question about it. And I'm a big advocate of that. But there's nothing wrong, even within your own field, whatever it is, to seek the counsel of others, because they can often give a perspective that you haven't thought of. And it's not because you're bad at your job. It's because when you're directly in something, you don't see around it. You don't see all the other angles. So that's always a great way to go. And then there's just, forget all the psychobabble. It's just great to talk to somebody when you're really stressed out. That's the bottom line. You know, that's really sometimes what it comes down to. So whether you've got too much on your plate and you feel like it's just not going the way you want and you just want to vent, or you really do feel like there's something where there's a formal diagnosis going on and you need the professional help, get the professional. There's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, we should be celebrating it. And that's something that I think we're learning this year as a society, or at least it's becoming gradually more acceptable than ever before. And I'm grateful for it because, you know, that's how, to me, humanity as a whole is going to progress. Because for too long, we've been doing this whole bootstrapping thing, and it's working well. I'm not going to lie. We've survived this long. But what's gotten us this far isn't going to keep us progressing forward if we're not careful.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Maybe that's the whole point of 5. Maybe that's the point of the apocalypse. The idea that we were so blind to everything around us, and we didn't stop and take the time to recognize that instead of just all of us shelling up doing our own individual things, we didn't reach out to each other more. And he is the only one that bears witness. Sorry to get so heady about that.
No, I think that's a fantastic analysis. So we're going to wrap all of this up into a bow and see what happens when we get 5 on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, 5. I'm Dr. Issues.
Good afternoon, Doctor.
I must confess that in all my years of experience and all my patients, I've never dealt with one quite as young as you.
Well, I wouldn't consider this a deviation from the norm. Despite my appearance, I'm actually 60 years old.
Really?
It's the curse of my abilities. I traveled ahead in time, spent 50 years figuring out how to get back, and when I returned, discovered my body had returned to the state it was when I first jumped. Not only that, I can't age, so I'm stuck in this prepubescent body permanently.
Oh my.
As you can imagine, it hasn't exactly been the best time for me.
I see. So, 5. Do you have another name I can use?
I would say yes, but unfortunately it's long been forgotten. It doesn't matter. There's no one worthwhile who would use it anyway.
Well, I would like to think...
And that's where you're wrong. It's ultimately futile, Doctor, because all of this discussion is an attempt to think the unthinkable, undo what can't be undone, unless I've already thought and done it.
You're literally talking in circles, you know?
Living in circles, yes.
Must you correct every phrase?
No, but when I don't, there's nobody else around to do it for me, so it might as well be me.
What is it that you want? Like, really? You talk as if you already have all the answers.
Not all of them, just more than most. Maybe I want a little more.
Well, I mean, that's a common problem in a way, you know, hedonistic adaptation.
Hard to be hedonistic when everyone sees your appearance as a cherub.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
I would. I have. I use this. And I have to drown my past in booze sometimes because nobody believes a little boy has done what I've done.
Well, what have you done?
Kill.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A lot.
Still sorry?
Not sure you should be. Some deserved it. Hopefully all. But I'm realistic. Play the odds.
And how do you feel about the potential innocents you killed?
It is what it is. Collateral damage, so to speak.
That's an awfully callous way to describe murder.
I wouldn't know. The people that asked me to kill for them didn't see a problem with it. I actually thought I talked it out pretty good with them myself when I had some alone time.
When was that?
20 years into the future before I knew I had to get back to the past.
That actually,
No need to stammer. I'll move on.
No. I apologize. I'm willing to admit when I need clarification on something. I get the gist of your description of time travel, but what did you see that made you want to go back? I mean, clearly it wasn't good.
Well, that's where the talking to myself part comes in. I was young, so I don't really know if I understood other than it was bad. Then I got to think about it later, and I realized it was the worst possible outcome for everyone involved. I screwed up trying to get back so many times. Any problems now are like a fart in the wind.
So, to summarize, you saw a bad future and you come back to a young age despite being older, and you do a lot of killing along the way. You must have some impressive coping mechanisms to even be able to talk about this so candidly.
I'm not going to argue with you about that, but everybody has their own style, you know? The ones I hang around with, we're considered freaks of nature.
Well, far be it from me to put a damper on your extracurricular activities, but surely you can appreciate value in something other than that.
Oh, I do have this cute little puppy.
Oh, wonderful. I'd love to hear all about.
He's the greatest thing. He has such a cute little droopy thing he does with his ear. And he likes to get his head scratched all the time. And he chases the ball for hours. And sometimes I fake throwing it or I replace it with a grenade so he can learn to sniff gunpowder. And then I give him his old ball back. And I think I feed him too much, but then he whimpers when I miss food time. And his name is Mr. Pennycrumb. And he's just...
Whoa. Such a brief period of time, you showed more emotional range than with any serious topic you've discussed so far. That seems like a good feeling for you. Would you like more of that?
Yes, please.
You don't have to say please. Well then, I guess our goal is to help broaden your emotional spectrum while we're reconnecting you to living things.
Close enough.
So shall I expect you in a future session?
Were I a man who considered such things, I'd appreciate that play on words. As it stands, I simply acknowledge it and say that we will see each other again. So, he really likes his dog.
Who doesn't?
Like, really, really likes his dog.
Who doesn't?
Well, you don't have a dog.
But if I did, I would absolutely love him.
Fair enough. So, recommended reading. For 5, I would say Volume 2, Dallas, gives much more in-depth characterization for 5 than the first one. Volume 1 tends to be focused on Superboy and 7. Volume 2 is much more 5's story. So, if you want. But having said all of that, you can't really understand what happens in Volume 2 until you read Volume 1. And as we said before, we don't know what happens in Volume 3. We'll get around to it. And if there's something that really impacts number 5 in Volume 3, when we get around to it, we'll do a little addendum to this episode and we'll address it accordingly. So upcoming episodes, Jim Gordon Jr., Crystal, and Emma Frost. I think Emma's going to give us a good opportunity to revisit a lot of the Stepford Cuckoos that whole discussion that we had in the episode that we did on them. So we can definitely bring that back. And then Crystal also gives us an opportunity to revisit Medusa.
Yep.
So a lot of references to past episodes coming up in our future episodes. And you can find all of our episodes on our website, capesonthecouch.com. We've also got a Patreon page, patreon.com/capesonthecouch, where you can subscribe and unlock additional content, get early access, and the aforementioned trade paperback review that we did of the Umbrella Academy Volume 1 Apocalypse Suite, as well as the recently recorded Punisher Welcome Back Frank story that we did with Matt. So feel free to check those out on the Patreon page. And we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Capes on the Couch. And if you listen to us on a platform that allows you to and leave a rating and review, please do that, because that's one of the best ways for us to build the show and to grow and to really get in front of some new eyeballs. So if you listen to us on Apple Podcast or if you have a Podchaser account, please leave us a rating and review. And if you email us at capesonthecouch@gmail.com with a screen cap of your review and send us your address, we will send you a sticker as a way to say thank you, because that, like I said, really, really helps us grow the show and expand the reach. So we've got a couple of things that, a bunch of ideas percolating upstairs in the old noggin, provided I have the sufficient brain power to discuss them with Doc, as well as the time to talk about them. But, hey, if we get enough patrons and I can quit my job, then I get to do this full time. That's the dream, ain't it?
Hey.
So having said all of that, that's all I've got, Doc. I await your usual pun.
Well, I mean, it's not even that. It's just making sure that when you need a break, you always try to take 5. The problem is 5 of what?
Very well said. For Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.